Exiled as F-rank trash, Lin Feng lands on a garbage planet. Instead, he turns it into the galaxy's hottest destination. Lin Hao sends him away with no food or rescue. But the dead world is actually humanity's abandoned Earth. His agrarian system converts public emotion into farming energy. His old agricultural training turns that energy into real food. One tomato draws 10,000 viewers. Roasted rabbit draws millions. Soon billionaires beg. A princess farms and warships retreat. A mechanical tribunal reads Lin Feng's sentence while his exile pod races away from the Imperial capital. Imperial law bars anyone with substandard psychic power from important family affairs, and his grade is the lowest possible. Lin Hao exploits that rule after the collateral heir talks back to a direct line elder during a clan banquet. The punishment strips Lin Feng of family status and sends him to D0001, never to be recalled. Inside the pod, two lives collide as a second set of memories floods his mind. One life belongs to an agricultural graduate from ancient Earth who specializes in drought-resistant winter wheat. 7 years of university research and fieldwork taught him how to test soil, build shelters, trap animals, and raise crops. The other life belongs to an 18-year-old Lin clan outcast, abused for his F-rank psychic power. Lin Hao expects the exile planet to erase that embarrassing branch member within 3 months. This instead identifies its destination as Earth, an abandoned world officially labeled uninhabitable and resource-depleted. Atmospheric friction shakes the cabin until the vessel crashes across open ground and its hatch releases automatically. Fresh air carrying the scent of soil and grass rushes inside, something no artificial station can reproduce. Lin Feng steps out beneath a real sky and recognizes the ancestral planet humanity abandoned long ago. Wild grass covers the plains. Hills rise beyond the landing site, and a clear river runs nearby. He cannot explain Earth's lost population, but one handful of soil proves the land can still support crops. That discovery activates the interstellar agrarian system and gives him one objective: restore humanity's lost agricultural civilization. The beginner package contains farm tools, tomato and cucumber seeds, livestock knowledge, and 1 bottle of soil improvement solution. That single bottle can transform an acre of barren ground into fertile soil, ready for planting. For anyone else, the supplies would barely delay starvation. For Lin Feng, they are exactly the tools his training requires. Modern humanity survives on synthetic nutrient paste, so ordinary exiles receive no food rescue or return flight. His identity band merely monitors his vital signs until death confirms the sentence has been completed. Lin Feng decides to find water, improve the soil, and plant his first seeds before darkness arrives. The same identity band automatically activates a public live stream designed to frighten citizens with an exile's suffering. Spectators enter expecting radiation sickness, public panic, and a quick death on the notorious garbage planet. At Lin Clan headquarters, Lin Hao dismisses the broadcast because an F-rank exile should have no chance of surviving. Lin Feng pours out the improvement solution, watches dead soil turn dark and loose, then begins digging precise furrows. The first viewers mock his Sitsukutha and predict that local radiation will make him collapse within minutes. 15 minutes pass, and he keeps planting cucumbers without displaying a single symptom. A crystal-clear river gives him his next proof. Although it insists untreated planetary water must be poisonous, he drinks directly from his hands and finds the spring cleaner than anything sold in his previous life. Farther along the bank, wild tomatoes hang from a bush, bright red and perfectly ripe. The network's ancient database misidentifies them as toxic berries capable of killing him within seconds. Lin Feng takes one bite anyway, proving the planet's food is safe while the sweet tangy juice fills his mouth. Full sensory streaming transmits that aroma to citizens who have never smelled natural food in their entire lives. 10,000 viewers arrive almost immediately, and fear turns into hunger the moment their senses register the tomato. The system begins collecting their shock, confusion, and longing as usable emotional energy. Every strong reaction fills its reservoir, which can unlock better crops, advanced tools, and new farming technology. This creates a powerful loop. Better food tracks more viewers, and their emotions finance the next improvement. Lin Feng then notices rabbit tracks in the grass and builds a snare from sticks, vines, and crushed fruit. The technique comes from agricultural field internships, where practical survival mattered as much as classroom theory. A rabbit enters the trap, giving him meat that the Empire's citizens regard only as an expensive companion animal. He prepares it for food with one clean motion, sending horrified reports through the chat while the audience keeps growing. After cleaning the rabbit, he strikes sparks from iron-rich stone and builds a cooking fire beside the river. Rendered fat hits the flames, and the smell of roasted meat reaches more than 100,000 synchronized viewers. Their bodies recognize hunger, even though their civilization has forgotten every meal that once satisfied it. Lin bites into crisp, tender rabbit and finally eats his first complete meal since crossing worlds. The same people who demanded his arrest begin offering fortunes for one remaining leg. Li Xinghe, the empire's richest businessman, raises the offer to 1 billion star credits. Lin Feng understands that natural food is not merely survival material here. It is the rarest luxury in the galaxy. He closes the stream before accepting any bid, deliberately leaving millions of hungry spectators without another sensory signal. Their frustration produces even more energy, proving that negative emotions feed the system as efficiently as admiration. With the first cycle working, crops can create attention. Attention can unlock technology, and technology can restore the planet. He smokes the leftover meat, reinforces a shallow cave, and stores enough food to survive the night. Conditions remain rough, but his old field camps were worse, and Earth already feels more like home than exile. While he sleeps, replay clips of the tomato and roasted rabbit spread across the Star Network. Within hours, tens of millions set reminders. Mainstream media covers the auction, and nutrient paste suddenly looks unbearable. The Lin clan holds an emergency meeting because the man they discarded now commands more attention than several family companies. Bringing him back would expose their abuse, while abducting him would violate an exile order witnessed across the empire. Lin Hao claims an ancient relic must be helping him, but the clan chooses to watch instead of correcting its mistake. That delay gives Lin Feng time to turn one successful meal into a permanent foothold on Earth. By morning, offline replays have filled nearly half the system's reservoir and pushed his follower count beyond 20 million. The system sinks now offers a construction quest, giving him 7 days to build safe housing with food storage and animal protection. Sunlight streamed into the cave, blinding him. He walked to the cave mouth, tore a strip of smoked rabbit meat from where it hung, squatted beside the stream, and ate it plain with water. After drying overnight, the smoked meat had formed a thin, firm crust on the surface. Inside, the meat was tender and chewy, heavy with smoky aroma. It was no gourmet feast, yet more than enough to fill his belly. The system's panel automatically displayed statistics collected overnight from live stream replays. The replays kept generating emotional energy while he slept. The strongest reactions came from frustration over the closed stream. While the reservoir reached 43% and followers passed 21 million. Chewing the meat strip, he muttered, "Impressive." He had far more important things to do today. Crouching, he scanned his surroundings and considered his next move. This cave was poorly situated. It was too shallow and faced the prevailing wind. He had shivered through the late hours of last night. Worse still, its low-lying position meant floodwater from the stream could submerge the cave after heavy rain. He needed a proper place to build a house. The instant the thought crossed his mind, the system panel lit up. The quest requires protection from weather and animals, dedicated food storage, and a stable home. Its reward includes construction blueprints and an iron axe. That meant access to more advanced building plans in the future. He stuffed the last bite of meat into his mouth, clapped dust off his hands, and stood. With breakfast finished, Lin Feng turns toward the hovering drone and gets back to work. It was a built-in device linked to his identity band and operated automatically. He made no deliberate attempt to start broadcasting. However, the identity band's protocol automatically restored the live stream whenever Lin Feng was active. So, when Lin Feng slung his iron axe over his shoulder and marched into the forest, more than 20 million viewers simultaneously received a push notification. Exile Lin Feng's livestream resumed. Li Xinghe raised his bid to 30 billion star credits. He tests trunks for density and rot before selecting a straight hardwood tree with a bull-sized diameter. He raised his iron axe and began chopping. In the Galactic Empire, all plant life was legally protected. After 3 axe blows, the constant notification pings irritated him. The floating screen keeps repeating Li Xinghe's 30 billion credit offer, but Lin Feng refuses to interrupt his work. At Xinghe Group headquarters in the Galactic Center, Li Xinghe watches from a levitating wheelchair. His gaunt fingers tapped rhythmically against the armrest. His personal secretary stood nearby and spoke cautiously. Li Xinghe replies hoarsely that Lin Feng has noticed the offer, then orders his secretary to investigate the exile's complete history. Li Xinghe reopened his eyes and fixed his gaze on the hologram, showing the young man swinging an axe deep in the woods. At 137 years old, the richest man of the empire felt genuine curiosity for the very first time toward an F-rank exile. Inside Anna's bedchamber at the Imperial Palace, the 19-year-old princess has refused food for 3 days. 12 bottles of premium-flavored nutrient paste, prepared by the Empire's top nutrition team, sat neatly beside her levitation bed. Vanilla, mixed fruit, cream, and many others. Hologram labels described tantalizing flavors. Yet, she had not touched a single one. These nutrient pastes, craved by people across the galaxy, held zero appeal for her. 3 days earlier, she had accidentally opened a widely shared stream replay. She had seen tomato juice dripping down the young man's chin, heard the sizzle as roasted rabbit fat dripped onto flames, and felt the unique sensations transmitted through full sensory streaming. Anna stared at the screen, pupils dilating. After 3 full days of silence, her stomach emitted a loud audible gurgle. Hunger is completely new to Anna, yet the moment she tries nutrient paste, nausea forces her to reject it. Overwhelming nausea welled up from her stomach, and she threw up. She feared she might starve to death, an absurd fate for an imperial princess. Yet here was something entirely unfamiliar that had awakened genuine hunger inside her. Lin Feng spotted a plant in the underbrush. He set down his axe and walked toward a patch of dark red, peeking out from shrubs. When he recognized the plants, his eyes widened. Clusters of tiny dark red berries hung thick on branches with brown star-shaped dried fruits scattered across the ground nearby. The system unlocks the prerequisites for Sichuan-style recipes, giving those recovered seasonings immediate value. With them, food could become truly delicious. As excitement rose, something else caught his eye that thrilled him even more. Bright red chilies rise from the underbrush nearby, finally giving him the heat missing from his first rabbit meal. On his way back, he detoured to check the rabbit trap he had set the previous day. Repeated activity in one area made wildlife wary, yet he heard fluttering noises as he drew near. A large wild pheasant flaps inside the snare, its vivid plumage and long reddish tail, revealing how freely Earth's wildlife has flourished. It was far bulkier than pheasants Lin Feng, remembered from Earth in places untouched by human settlement. Lin Feng weighs the pheasant, judges it large enough for several portions, and carries it back for a proper feast. Viewers remembered that he had already survived the tomatoes. Lin Feng barely glanced upward. Back at camp, he stacked chopped wood against a tree, retrieved the small knife from his farming toolkit, gripped the pheasant firmly by its neck, and moved the blade swiftly. Lin Feng ignored the chatter. He heated water, scalded the feathers off, gutted, and cleaned the bird. The whole process took 15 minutes. Once cleaned, the pale meat was neatly diced into thumb-sized chunks. While chopping, he muttered to himself. He lacks bean paste, light soy sauce, and cooking wine, but Sichuan pepper, star anise, and dried chilies are enough to improvise. The system unlocks a basic spicy chicken recipe, built around layered numbing heat, fragrance, and savory flavor. High-temperature oil is recommended to release spice aromas. A faint smile tugged at Lin Feng's lips. He took stored rabbit fat and slowly rendered it on a heated stone slab. Pale yellow animal fat turned transparent as it heated, rippling gently across the stone surface. Full sensory streaming transmitted the aroma faithfully to 23 million online viewers. Numbing heat, sharp spice, and rich toasted fragrance exploded all at once. Across the Galactic Center, a middle-aged viewer sneezes so violently that nutrient paste sprays across his screen. On East Sector 7 Commercial Street, a female office worker broke into fits of coughing with streaming tears. Her coworkers thought she was suffering an allergic reaction. On a southern, a 16-year-old boy stares at the feed as his mouth waters nonstop, despite never learning what spice tastes like. The stimulation drives viewership from 30 million to 40 million, then 50 million, making the Farm Tea Friend stream the Empire's top entertainment broadcast. It ranked #1 across all Empire entertainment channels. Lin Feng poured diced chicken onto the stone slab. Meat tumbled amid peppercorns and chilies. His stirring motions were fluid and steady. 50 million people watched the F-rank EXILE perform like a master chef cooking in the open air of a desolate planet, completely in his element. The system detected an energy overflow and automatically expanded the reservoir after it reached 78% capacity. Li Xinghe trembled, staring at the holographic projection. For elderly people with widespread organ deterioration, like himself, sensory signals from full sensory streaming were amplified many times over. His stomach contracted in sharp spasms. His failing body sent out desperate signals. His secretary's mouth fell open. The instant peppercorns hit hot oil. Anna shot upright from her bed. As an S-rank psychic, Anna experiences the synchronized flavor tenfold more intensely than an ordinary viewer. Waves of numbing spicy sensation surged over her from head to toe, running down her spine. Her tongue tingled, her lips burned, and her stomach cramped violently. 3 physicians rushed into the bedchamber at once. They froze at what they saw. The princess knelt beside her bed, hands clutching the mattress edge, eyes locked unblinkingly on the holographic screen, pupils dilated wide. A thin stream of saliva trickled down her chin. Back on Earth, Lin Feng finished cooking spicy chicken, piling it onto the rough stone slab platter. Glistening oil coated the meat. Sichuan peppercorns dotted the surface, steam curling upward. Though simply presented, its bold colors and rising steam carried raw, overwhelming appeal, even through holographic displays. Then Li Xinghe sent 100 billion star credits, 10 times the previous offer. Lin Feng glanced briefly at the gift notification, with little visible reaction. Slowly, he picked up bamboo chopsticks, lifted a piece of chicken and brought it near his nose to inhale deeply. He sighed with genuine enjoyment. He was delighted by the aroma of proper food after so long. 50 million viewers collectively swallowed hard. He slowly placed the diced chicken in his mouth. Full sensory streaming broadcasted every sensation faithfully. First, the numbing tingle, spreading like an electric current across his entire tongue and mouth. Then, burning spiciness rising through his throat toward his nasal passages and forehead. Finally, tender, juicy chicken burst against his palate. Spices amplified its savory taste tenfold, delivering layers of flavor one after another. Sweat beaded on Lin Feng's forehead, eyes reddened. He gasped for cool air, yet never paused his chopsticks. Piece after piece went into his mouth. Both pain and pleasure showed plainly across his features. Within 1 hour, psychiatric clinics report a 400% rise in unexplained hunger, nutrient paste aversion, and persistent phantom flavors. Lin Feng wiped sweat from his forehead after finishing most of the meal, set down his chopsticks, and gave the camera a meaningful smile. 2 hours after the broadcast ends, bittersweet pleasure pain becomes the Empire's most searched phrase. Citizens chase the sensation through hot nutrients paste, legal stimulants, and black market simulators, but none can recreate natural food. A glowing light ball unfolded before him. Dozens of translucent blueprints floating into view. Mortise and tenon houses, wells, winding gear, underground cellars, drying racks, stone mills, and more. He had worked on farms for 3 years back on Earth and knew basic carpentry. Mortise and tenon joints required precision. Yet they were well within his abilities, especially with blueprint guidance from the system. He stored the blueprints in system storage, lay down in his temporary shelter. Before closing his eyes, he glanced at back-end statistics. His follower count had surpassed 100 million, and cumulative gift revenue exceeded 150 billion star credits. Lin Hao will grow desperate soon enough. A faint smirk crossed Lin Feng's face, and he rolled over to sleep. At the Lin clan's main residence, a crash echoed from Lin Hao's room. A porcelain teacup shattered across the floor. Lin Hao's face darkened with rage, knuckles cracking as he clenched his hands. Lin Hao calls the stream a direct humiliation to the clan, while his subordinates remain silent around him. A steward warns that Lin Feng's popularity makes direct suppression dangerous, but Lin Hao kicks over a table instead. Lin Hao paced back and forth across the room, his eyes cold and menacing. Lin Hao contacts Director Chen at the Cultural Regulation Bureau and orders him to disable the livestream's synchronized sensory feed. Early the next morning, Lin Feng restarted his stream, planning to roast some wild fruit for breakfast. He had barely set the fruit onto the stone slab when the live feed picture broke up heavily. Every trace of the roasting aroma vanished completely. Lin Feng narrowed his eyes and pulled up his back-end information. A regulatory notice confirms that visual and olfactory synchronization has been disabled, sending viewership from 50 million down to 8 million. Most viewers had already left. After all, there was nothing to see or smell. Lin Feng put out the fire under the stone slab, brushed dust off his hands and spoke calmly to the camera. Rather than argue, Lin Feng announces a different demonstration and begins carving interlocking wooden joints. The blade glided across the timber, sending wood shavings flying. Within minutes, a precise dovetail joint sat before the camera. He carved a matching mortise. The matching mortise and tenon locked together tightly, creating a repairable joint, stronger than welded or bolted connections. It can also be disassembled and repaired. The theoretical structural strength is superior. Lin Feng slung an axe over his shoulder and walked toward the edge of the forest. The first step to building a house is selecting timber. 3 hours later, the rough frame of a wooden house stood complete. 4 solid support posts anchored firmly in the ground, beams locked into the posts via dovetail joints. Not a single nail held the structure, yet it did not shift an inch. Lin Feng stood beside the frame, wiped sweat from his forehead, and smiled toward the camera. Engineers recognized that the same joining method could strengthen starships, and a senior Imperial Engineers Association official follows the stream. Instead of dropping, viewership climbed back to 20 million concurrent viewers. The audience had transformed. Where once there had been mostly food lovers, now engineers, architects, machinery enthusiasts, and technology-minded people filled the stream. Lin Feng glanced at his back-end statistics, said nothing and kept working. He is still gaining followers. Lin Hao's aide reports that the new technical audience has greater spending power than the original food fans. The vice president of the Imperial Engineers Association has also followed Lin Feng, making another crackdown politically expensive. Lin Hao cracks a wooden table in anger, while Lin Feng calmly completes the house's main frame on Earth. He brushed with dust from his hands and pulled a handful of bright green leaves from his waist. After a hard day's work, Lin Feng decided to brew something refreshing. He boiled water and dropped in the rosemary mint leaves. The instant boiling water hit the leaves, a cool sensation traveled through the holographic synchronization feed. This was no ordinary taste or smell stimulus. It was a deeper mental level sensation. Although taste and scent remain blocked, mint's active factor reaches viewers through tactile psychic feedback. At the Imperial Palace, Anna's physicians conduct their daily examination, while the mint sensation enters the room. As the cool mint tea sensation washed over the room, readings on monitoring equipment fluctuated sharply. Anna's erratic psychic frequency stabilized at once. The chief physician turned toward Anna with trembling hands. Anna closed her eyes and wore a peaceful expression for the very first time. She opened her eyes and fixed her gaze on the teacup held by Lin Feng on the hologram screen. Li Xinghe lay inside a medical pod, receiving his weekly psychic maintenance therapy. His skin was ashen, and his whole body shook with muscle spasms. His secretary hurried in and projected the livestream feed. The moment the faint mint scent arrived through holographic sync, the centenarian snapped awake and sat upright in his medical pod. His personal doctor stared in shock at the vital signs monitor. Li Xinghe's doctor watches the elderly man's brainwaves stabilize and struggles to accept the readings. Lin Feng deliberately finishes the mint tea on camera and stretches as if a full day of labor left no fatigue. He casually mentions finding enough wild mint for half a year, causing purchase requests to multiply instantly. That night, inside the live stream platform headquarters, an emergency meeting was underway. The operations director delivered his report. Far from collapsing after content restrictions, Lin Feng's livestream has acquired new commercial value. 17 top-tier Imperial corporations want partnerships, including Xinghe Group. A secretary interrupts with news that Li Xinghe's lawyers demand immediate restoration of every stream feature. Silence fell over the meeting room. 3 minutes later, another confidential directive arrived. The Imperial Royal House instructed the platform to handle Lin Feng's livestream fairly and guarantee freedom of information dissemination. Two powerful forces applied pressure simultaneously. The CEO took a deep breath. The platform announced that its technical faults were fixed, while Lin Hao crushed a glass after learning that Li Xinghe and the royal house had intervened. His eyes filled with menace. The butler kept his head bowed and said nothing. Lin Hao stayed quiet for a long moment, then let out a cold laugh. The next morning, every feature returns, restoring sharp video, synchronized scent, and full sensory feedback. Viewership climbed from 10 million to 80 million within moments. Lin Feng watched viewership surge and smiled faintly toward the camera. Lin Feng thanks Lin Hao for filtering out casual viewers, then prepares a double-strength mint tea for the remaining fans. Boiling water releases a powerful mint fragrance that surges through holographic feeds across the galaxy. Countless people drained from heavy psychic strain, slumped back in their seats. One elite Imperial psychic warrior on a training ground set down his weapon and formally requested emergency relief. Lin lifted his teacup and gave the camera a meaningful smile. He presented it as a fatigue-relieving wonder drink. He drank it all in one go, closed his eyes deliberately, showing complete mental refreshment and physical ease, and sighed loudly for effect. Offers jumped from 10 million to 100 million star coins for a single leaf, but Lin Feng refuses to sell. In Laboratory B7 at the Imperial Academy of Sciences, Assistant Qin rushes inside carrying fresh livestream data. His holographic screens overflowed with gene sequence charts for his 3-year stalled project, Artificial Psychic Stabilizer Synthesis. Qin reports that leaked brainwave logs from an S-rank warrior improved while the soldier watched Lin Feng stream. Professor Murphy dismisses the 0.3% change as statistical noise and throws the report away. He snatched the tablet from Qin's hands, skimmed the contents, and tossed it straight in the waste bin as beside us. Murphy argues that accepting boiled plants as medicine would invalidate 20 years of funded research. Qin opened his mouth to argue. He had no choice but to turn and leave. At Xing Group's medical center, Li Xinghe's test showed a 17% improvement. He sat on the edge of the hospital bed, wearing plain gray patient robes, yet his eyes remained sharp. He read over the report. The secretary stood 2 meters away, looking hesitant. Li Xinghe orders a covert task force to collect Earth's ecological data without official records or legal channels. 3 men sat opposite Lin Hao, a Star Network public opinion strategist, and 2 certified specialists from the Imperial Psychic Medicine Association. Lin Hao leaned back in his chair and tapped his fingers against the tabletop. Lin Hao admits the tea smells pleasant, but orders his strategists to separate flavor from any claimed medical benefit. The strategist reports that EXILE survival content is already the 3rd largest trend on the Star Network. Lin Hao orders respected experts to publish a statement declaring that natural plants cannot affect psychic power. 1 hour later, the signed joint statement appeared online, bearing 3 respected Imperial experts' names. Public sentiment across Star Network shifted instantly. Lin Feng squatted beside a stream, splashing cold water over his face. The chill made him shiver. He shook water off his hands, opened his system panel, and browsed Star Network. Even the S-rank warrior releases a denial, but Lin Feng recognizes the language as forced military public relations. His viewer graph confirms the campaign's effect, showing a fall from 80 million to 40 million. Numbers had dropped from 80 million down to 40 million. Lin Feng stood and brushed dirt off his trousers. He opened his system shop and spent 45,000 emotion points to purchase a primary matter composition analyzer. His balance stood at 47,832 points. Almost completely drained, he did not hesitate for even a second. A palm-sized silver-white analyzer materializes, shaped like a compact scanning pistol, with a sample chamber. He plucked a mint leaf and placed it inside the testing slot. The analyzer identified radiation mutated mint, containing psychic compounds far beyond the interstellar standard. The mint contains 0.003% alpha factor, which temporarily binds to neural receptors and raises psychic activity. Boosts psychic power activity by 1 to 2% for 15 to 30 minutes. Lin Feng stared at the data, his breath catching. He had long suspected Earth plants had changed, yet he had never imagined mutations this extreme. Notice this factor did not exist within Earth plant life before the Great Purge. It emerged through radiation-driven genetic mutation. Roughly 12% of Earth's present-day plant species carry various psychic-related compounds. This system recommends exploiting the information gap, but Lin Feng stores the analyzer and surveys the surrounding plants himself. Rosemary carries a beta stabilization factor, while moss beside the river contains a gamma psychic repair compound. A small blue flower contains delta amplification factor, although its natural concentration remains too low for a measurable effect. Yet, the system informed him he could boost concentrations with its ripening and modification function. The modification function will unlock only after the wooden house is complete, giving Lin Feng a clear construction deadline. 40 million viewers watch, while hostile messages mock his science. But Lin Feng focuses on the unfinished frame. 3 authoritative scientists confirmed natural plants cannot alter psychic power. He picked up his wooden mallet. He turned and got back to work. There was no point arguing or defending himself. Mocking messages kept rolling in. Lin Feng paid them no mind. Mortise and tenon beams locked cleanly into upright posts, making crisp, satisfying knocking sounds. He plucked a few rosemary leaves growing beside his campsite, crushed them between his fingers, and inhaled. Clear herbal scent refreshed him. He exhaled comfortably and returned to his labor. Full sensory transmission carried that crisp, herbal aroma out to 40 million viewers. Assistant Chin returns to Laboratory B7 and places physiological feedback data from 40 million viewers before Professor Murphy. On it were live stream platform backend, physiological feedback statistics gathered across 40 million viewers. During the 10 seconds after Lin Feng crushed rosemary, 37% of viewers registered positive brainwave changes. The probability of random coincidence falls below 0.001, forcing Murphy to reconsider his dismissal. Murphy demands a double check, and Chin runs to recover the discarded report, while the professor opens every archived broadcast. Murphy put his glasses back on and pulled up every single full synchronization recording from Lin Feng's livestream history. He reviewed frame by frame. Every moment when natural plant scents were broadcast correlated with positive shifts in audience psychic readings. It had started the very first time Lin Feng ate that red fruit. The data had always shown positive trends. He filed none of these findings for official review. Instead, he locked every data set inside his personal encrypted archive. Dusk falls over Earth as Lin Feng finishes work, and viewership quietly climbs from 40 million to 60 million. He stretched and casually wandered over to the mint thicket. He plucked a leaf, popped it into his mouth, and chewed. Backend statistics showed 40 million people had set reminders for his next broadcast within 3 minutes after he went offline. Back on Earth the next morning, Lin Feng leaves his shelter and eats a simple breakfast. The night before, he had trapped another rabbit. Earth's restored wilderness teemed with wildlife. Rabbits and pheasants were easy to catch. He planned to prepare 2 different dishes from this rabbit for lunch and dinner. After breakfast, he climbed onto his half-finished wooden house frame, hoisted a heavy beam onto one shoulder, steadied it with one hand, and swung his wooden mallet with the other. The tenon clicked firmly into its mortise, with a solid thud, fitting perfectly tight. Arguments over whether the effects were real continued. Throughout the stream, he had been busy building a house these past few days, surviving on wild fruits and tomatoes. The fiercer the arguments grew, the higher his viewership climbed. He did not even need to spend credits on advertising. He had just hoisted the second crossbeam onto his shoulders when a soft ding echoed from his system panel. An encrypted private call arrives from the dedicated line of Xinshi Group's chairman. Lin Feng raised an eyebrow. He did not answer right away. Instead, he set the crossbeam firmly into its mortise and tenon joint. After hearing the crisp click of interlocking timber, he brushed wood shavings off his palms and slowly opened the communication channel. He cut the livestream feed to a black screen. As the connection established, a holographic projection lit up before him. Li Xinghe appears in a levitating wheelchair, his gaunt and haggard body revealing severe age-related decline. Every line on his face bore marks of fading mental vitality, yet his eyes burned sharply like an eagle locking onto prey. Lin Feng studies the billionaire from his half-finished house while Li Xinghe waits for a response. Li Xinghe answered that money could not buy him more time, then narrowed his eyes at Lin Feng's refusal. Over more than a century of business dealings, no one had ever brushed aside his offer like this. This young man was even harder to negotiate with than the crafty old power brokers in the Imperial capital. Lin Feng had prepared his list long beforehand and began reciting each item. Lin Feng demands an S-grade processing center, 20 military energy cells, planetary monitors, and an orbital early warning network. Those supplies are affordable to Li Xinghe, but Lin Feng also demands every publicly available Imperial research paper on psychic power. He wants the complete archive, and Li Xinghe narrows his eyes because the purpose of that demand remains hidden. The processing center, energy cells, and defense early warning network were all military-controlled goods. Trading items like these was a capital offense, equivalent to smuggling goods to penal colonies. The assistant opened his mouth to object. A single sharp glance from Li Xinghe silenced him. That was all the old man said. The assistant tried to protest once more, but Li Xinghe waved him down. Li Xinghe's voice was dry and raspy as he looked straight at Lin Feng. He could tell the old man truly had nothing left to lose. People backed into a corner were willing to take the biggest gambles. Their first trade will deliver 50 mint extracts, 20 rosemary oils, and 10 bottles of compound psychic soothing beverage. Lin Feng read off a set of coordinates for geosynchronous orbit around the planet. Lin Feng gives him orbital coordinates and orders an unmanned cargo ship to release the supplies there within 3 days. Li Xinghe questions how a grounded exile can retrieve orbital cargo, but Lin Feng promises a demonstration and ends the call. With a perfectly calm expression, he hefted another crossbeam onto his shoulder. He needed to finish constructing his house first, unlock the plant acceleration function, and mass-produce these high-concentration botanical extracts. In Laboratory B7, Professor Murphy locks the door and opens private models built from the livestream's physiological data. He cross-referenced every timestamp where Lin Feng came into contact with plants against the brainwave curves of 40 million viewers, starting with that red fruit, then the grilled rabbit meat, spicy diced chicken, all the way to the rosemary. Every single incident produced measurable positive physiological shifts. Furthermore, effects grew stronger with repeated exposure. Hard empirical data sent a shiver through him. This was no placebo effect. Genuine physical responses were being triggered. Rather than submit his discovery, Murphy applies to visit Earth and inspect the plants personally. The application is rejected because D0001 is an S-class penal colony, closed to non-military personnel. Murphy removes his glasses and frowns. At the palace, a royal physician quietly briefs the emperor about Anna. Anna's instability episodes have fallen by 40%, and she voluntarily requested food for the first time in 3 years. Last night, for the first time in 3 years, the princess voluntarily asked for food. She only drank half a tube of nutrient paste, but this marks unprecedented progress. After a long silence, the emperor orders a covert investigation into Earth's current conditions and possible entry routes. Investigate the current state of penal colony, D0001, and determine whether entry is feasible. The following day, Lin Feng's broadcast becomes a pure construction stream as he fits the final rafters. Completing the house unlocks plant acceleration, farm planning, and primary seed gene editing privileges. Standing before his finished wooden house, Lin Feng exhaled deeply. A long-awaited sense of stability washed over him. Gift notifications flooded the screen so heavily they caused brief lag. Lin Feng paid them little mind. His full attention was fixed on the 3 newly unlocked system functions. He ends the live stream and immediately tests the newly unlocked functions on the mint beside his house. The system selected radiation mutated mint as the first acceleration target. Estimated completion time 24 hours. He repeated the procedure for rosemary, as well as that small blue flower containing the delta factor. A warning explains that excessive delta amplification creates addiction risk once concentration passes 0.05%. It is advised to stay within safe concentration thresholds. He was not manufacturing intoxicants. Risks like this had to be eliminated entirely. Early morning on the 3rd day, Lin Feng plucked 1 leaf of modified mint and placed it inside his analyzer. Swept across the sample and test results appeared. Alpha psychic soothing factor concentration, 0.02%. Concentration had jumped nearly 7-fold up from the original 0.003%. He tested the rosemary next. Its beta factor concentration had likewise multiplied. After double-checking datasets multiple times to confirm accuracy, Lin Feng rolled up his sleeves and got down to work. Waiting fans enter the next broadcast immediately, but Lin Feng ignores their pleas and deliberately builds anticipation. Opening the system shop, he redeemed a botanical extraction device capable of processing mint and distilling rosemary essential oil. It was remarkable alien-level technology. The compound beverage poses no difficulty because he can blend tomato pulp with distilled mint and rosemary essences. Drawing inspiration from fruit drink recipes from Earth in his past life, he could mash tomatoes into pulp and blend in distilled mint and rosemary essences that would make his specially formulated psychic soothing drink. He names the formula compound Psychic Soothing Beverage, then begins planning the next meal and delivery. Half of the rabbit from the previous day had become spicy diced rabbit. The rest had been stewed with tomatoes. Those 2 meals alone had earned him over 40,000 units of emotional energy. Eating meat every single day grows monotonous. A smirk tugged at Lin Feng's lips. Li Xinghe's shipment is only days away. So Lin Feng also begins building a large unidentified machine. With a mysterious smile, Lin Feng redeemed a large, unfamiliar piece of hardware from the system shop. Ignoring viewers, Lin Feng picked up welding equipment and began assembling the large device. Construction would easily take 2 full days. Feng Feng knelt within the woods and cut the last batch of improved mint, filling his basket. Analyzer readings confirmed alpha factor concentration remained stable at 0.02%. Satisfied, he walked toward the large metal apparatus beside his wooden house. Its base and coiled frame were assembled, yet its core component mounting socket stood empty like an open hand, waiting to receive hardware. Lin Feng retrieved 20 sealed bottles of compound psychic soothing beverage from system storage in Systec and shook them toward the camera. The 20 sealed beverage bottles belonged to Li Xinghe's order, and Lin Feng stores them despite enormous public bids. The audience could not understand how a penal colony could receive deliveries. Lin Feng offered no explanation. The camera naturally panned across the half-built metal device behind him. Welded steel formed its base. Stacked triple coils made up its upper frame. An empty mounting socket gave no clue to its purpose. Dozens of viewers asked about it, yet Lin Feng answered none, continuing his work. Cargo vessel Galaxy 7 enters Earth's gravitational pull and transmits its arrival signal to the farm. Lin Feng acknowledges the signal, sets down his tools, and checks the final components of his coiled apparatus. Only a few final core components still needed fitting. Inside the unmanned vessel, automated routines initiated. Without warning, the cargo vessel's automated deployment begins while alarms spread through its empty cabin. The cargo latches release, hull integrity collapses, and Galaxy 7 breaks apart in orbit. 12 sealed containers wrapped in roaring plasma tear toward the surface as Imperial military channels report the accident. Civilian cargo vessel suffers structural failure in orbit over D0001. Debris entering atmosphere within 1 minute. Concurrent viewers on Lin Feng's live stream jumped from 80 million to 200 million. Inside Lin Hao's study, an aide delivers the breaking report. Without daring to meet his eyes, Lin Hao smiles coldly and opens the live stream, convinced the falling cargo will destroy the farm. On the alien planet's surface, dozens of blazing red streaks sliced through cloud cover. Deep rumbling thunder rolled down from high altitude, growing louder and louder until the ground shook. Full sensory, streaming faithfully conveyed that overwhelming sense of menace. Many viewers instinctively tried closing the stream. Calm and composed beside his large apparatus, Lin Feng lifted his gaze toward the sky. He calculated the impact point of the first container and fine-tuned the angle of his coils. Once alignment was perfect, he pressed the activation switch. Coils atop the machine ignite with blue light against the fiery containers falling through the clouds. The first shipping container wrapped in plasma, heated to hundreds of degrees flames, abruptly decelerated 800 meters above the ground. The container falls at hundreds of meters per second before the field reduces its speed to only 10 meters per second. The 3-ton container drifts down like a leaf and lands inside Lin Feng's marked zone without damage. Dust stirred gently upon impact. The container hull remained intact. Concurrent viewership exceeded 500 million within 30 seconds. Lin Feng showed no dramatic reaction. He adjusted aiming angles and locked onto the next container. The same procedure slowed the second container safely down to the ground. Then the third, fourth, one after another, he reeled them in. Containers sat neatly lined up across the open ground to the north. After the 12th container lands, Lin Feng shuts down the machine and wipes sweat from his forehead. He admits the process is exhausting than farming. While recordings spread across the star network, inside Xinghe Group headquarters, holographic displays showed Li Xinghe watching the whole sequence unfold. No one at Xinghe Group recognizes the technology, and Li Xinghe laughs at the exile's growing collection of secrets. Li Shi waved the matter aside. Anything involving that youth tends to turn strange. Back on the planet's surface, Lin Feng began unpacking his delivered goods. Opening each container one by one, he spoke toward the livestream camera, ticking off inventory items. Energy cells and processing supplies fill the first containers, but the 9th holds an item absent from the manifest. Instead stood a compact folded defensive turret, finished in matte black. Its identification plate read Model Thunder 3. Tucked beside it was a handwritten digital note. Remember to complete calibration after installation. Lin Feng recognizes Li Xinghe's unlisted gift and smiles at the billionaire's understanding of useful leverage. 1 hour later, the defensive turret stood mounted on high ground beside his wooden house. The turret's 3-meter barrel points skyward, covering a 10-kilometer defense radius around the farm. Patting the gun barrel, Lin Feng turned meaningfully toward the livestream lens. He glanced upward toward the sky, his gaze carrying a quiet challenge. Within minutes, Lin Feng's defensive turret and his warning against trespassers dominate Imperial search rankings. Inside Lin Hao's luxury study, a 30 million credit porcelain artifact shatters across the floor. Lin Hao rages among the fragments, while Lin Feng finishes calibrating the turret and inventories his remaining supplies. The system confirms that the shipment can support Phase 3 construction across the farm. Lin Feng stacks the empty containers, opens his communicator, and calls Li Xinghe about the completed products. Silence stretched for 2 seconds on the other end of the line. 50 mint extracts and 20 rosemary oils are sealed inside an orbital cargo pod. 10 compound, psychic soothing beverages complete the order, ready for Li Xinghe's retrieval ship. Without waiting for a reply, Lin Feng ended the call and walked back toward his deceleration apparatus. He had already calculated parameters for reverse fire mode 3 minutes earlier. Shifting from receiving falling objects to launching payloads only required adjusting coil angles by 70 degrees. He manually repositioned the coils, locked the sealed cargo pod into place, and initiated energy charging. The lightweight cargo pod rises through the clouds, crosses the atmosphere, and settles into the assigned orbital coordinates. Full sensory streaming faithfully broadcast, the blue flash and rushing wind sounds. The same launcher had transformed from a landing system into a functional space catapult. The same machine that caught falling containers can launch things back out. System notification, emotional, intra-coin, collecting, astonishment. Lin Feng returns the coils to standby and wipes dust from his hands, as astonishment feeds the system. At Xinghe Group headquarters, the secretary found Li Xing, wearing a deeply perplexed expression. Then Li Xing laughed out loud and waved his hand. Li Xinghe personally enters the testing lab and opens the first bottle of compound psychic soothing beverage. Pale green liquids, swirled inside carrying a distinct aroma mixing mint and tomato, unlike any mental enhancement formulation he had ever encountered. He took a sip immediately. A cool sensation surged from his throat, straight up toward his nasal passages. Medical staff immediately positioned scanner probes toward him. Readings began scrolling across monitors. 3 minutes later, the chief medical officer stared fixedly at the screen, lips pressed tight. His psychic power fluctuation amplitude dropped from a steady baseline of 0.73, maintained over 10 years, down to 0.31, and continued trending, steadily lower. Complete silence fell over the testing laboratory, broken only by quiet swallowing sounds. Li Xinghe sets down the empty bottle and scans his staff with unprecedented clarity in his eyes. Because the effects would attract every royal house and consortium, he orders all test data encrypted and every witness bound to secrecy. He walked over toward a large window, overlooking sprawling interstellar city lights, and stood lost in brief thought. Li Xinghe understands that Lin Feng remains trapped on a penal colony with only one visible defensive turret. Once powerful factions discover the products, a lone exile's chance of surviving the attention will. He secretly orders a stealth-shielded data link for Earth, under the cover of commercial investment. The secretary jotted down the instructions silently. Back inside Lin Hao's study, an aide delivered routine updates. New Gal 67's wreckage reaches Lin Hao, whose brows tighten when analysts cannot identify the landing technology. Its core principle is a variant of electromagnetic resonance deceleration. Lin Hao clenched his hands into fists. Lin Hao orders his people to steal Li Xinghe's real medical records and determine what the products accomplished. Lin Hao leaned back in his chair, watching Lin Feng's silhouette projected across his display screen. He cannot understand how an unsupported F-grade family outcast gained technology beyond official Imperial registration. After ending the stream, Lin Feng did not sleep. He was about to build his very own farm. He opened the operation interface for the microprocessing center directly. A 3-dimensional modeling projection bathed his face in blue light. Sparks flew from alloy sheets beneath the cutting head, amid shrill noise. At 3 in the morning, the first load-bearing pillar emerges from the automated processing center. The system prompt chimed on schedule. Fundamental building blueprint library unlocked. Lin Feng scrolled through the blueprint details, his eyes landing on the energy consumption column. Minimum operating power 3 S-grade energy battery packs, wired in parallel. He glanced back at the 3 battery sets he had just hauled out of the shipping container. The system gave no reply. It never responded to such accusations. For the next several days, Lin Feng streamed while he worked. Day 1. Installing irrigation pipe networks. He went live, mounting his camera on top of the greenhouse frame for a panoramic overhead shot, squatting on the ground, tightening pipe joints. He moved with a skill that belied any first-time installer. Truth be told, this was far from his first time. He had laid the drip irrigation system himself back in his past life on Earth. His joke about hiring workers becomes a viral job advertisement from the sole resident of an exile planet. The phrase Lin Feng's job offer reaches 18th place on Imperial trending lists. Day 2, assembling the greenhouse. The processing center ran at full capacity. Processing center tuts, light-transmitting alloy panels that Lin Feng locks into the greenhouse frame. Full sensory streaming carries the cutting sparks, sharp metal sounds, and reflected sunlight to the audience. Sharp clicks as panels locked into place. Warm white glints of alloy catching sunlight. Once the frame is complete, Lin Feng installs temperature sensors, humidity controls, circulation fans, and supplemental lights. Temperature, humidity sensors, circulating fans, and supplementary light arrays were set in place one after another. While calibrating sensitivity for the third set of sensors, a new system prompt popped up. The system detects dormant ancient rice genes in Earth's soil, a crop humanity lost along with wheat and corn. All human food consisted of synthetic nutrition bars and nutrient fluids. A new main quest appears: restore the taste of rice by planting and harvesting the first successful crop. Objective: successfully plant and harvest the first rice crop. Reward: unlock advanced modification functions. Lin Feng began planning where to situate his rice paddies. He recalled soil along the northern riverbank. Its thick clay layer was ideal. Its pH leaned mildly acidic, yet remained manageable. The only obstacle was diverting a water source. He needed to dig an irrigation channel 3 kilometers from the river valley. 3 kilometers of manual channel work is brutal, but Lin Feng accepts the cost because the system provides essential tools. After all, the system marketplace stocked every tool he could possibly need. Days 3 and 4. Finishing defensive installations and remodeling paddy fields proceeded in parallel. The day perimeter fencing was welded shut. A system notification announced the farm security rating had risen to grade C. Spice burned across his tongue. He squinted and drew a satisfied breath. Digging the channel was brutally tiring. A mechanical arm fitted with a shovel handled heavy-duty excavation, but fine-tuning gradients and compacting channel walls still required hands-on work. 3 days later, Lin Feng's skin is darker, his palms are calloused, and the completed paddies finally hold water. Viewers tuning into his livestream had no clear idea exactly what he had been doing all this time. Lin Feng went live making no advance announcement. Barefooted, he stepped down into the flooded paddy. The moment full sensory streaming activated, 80 million concurrent viewers felt mud squeeze beneath their soles. Cool water laps at viewers' ankles while damp soil presses beneath their feet through the sensory feed. With his left hand, he separated seedlings. With his right, he pushed the first young rice shoot into the mud. 1 shoot, 2 shoots, 3 shoots. Neat rows of tender green sprouts emerged above murky water, bringing long-absent hope to this desolate planet. 80 million people watched online, and the scrolling feed came completely to a halt. Total silence lasted a full minute. Nothing short of miraculous for a stream with hundreds of millions of viewers. Nobody could fully name the emotion. Through full sensory streaming, they had touched for the very first time something that had sustained humanity thousands of years ago. For the first time, an interstellar audience feels the physical bond between seed, soil, labor, and survival. Discussion film passes 1 trillion posts, and the Ministry of Education republishes the scene as a living image of ancient rice paddies. An illustration from Chapter 7 of the standard interstellar history textbook, titled Agriculture Before the Great Purge. It was a blurry photograph of ancient rice paddies. Its composition mirrored Lin Feng's livestream footage almost perfectly. Elsewhere, inside Lin Hao's study, an aide projected data onto the tabletop and spoke with obvious tremors. Lin Hao's aide reports more than 200 million followers, an engagement exceeding every top 10 Imperial streamer. Lin Hao's chest tightens when he learns the military-grade communicator cannot be removed through ordinary platform controls. Sweat soaked through his shirt by the time he stepped out of the room. All was quiet across the farm. Only the low hum of perimeter defenses and distant river currents broke the silence. An anonymous encrypted message appeared. Lin Feng stared at the line. His thumb hovered over the screen for 10 seconds. He closed the communicator and walked toward the yard-based launch device. He typed fresh calculation parameters onto its interface. This time, he would take aim. Lin Feng glanced toward the young seedlings in his patties. The electromagnetic pulse fired with barely any commotion. An invisible beam of energy shot straight upward into the night sky and vanished beyond the atmosphere. Feedback confirms the orbital jammer was destroyed, and its debris will burn up within 72 hours. So Lin Feng goes inside to sleep. The next morning, someone posted a screenshot online showing an arc captured simultaneously by 3 civilian meteorological satellites. A civilian satellite image labels the strike as fireworks above Earth, and the public treats it as harmless gossip. Deep within the Imperial military internet, however, a classified report circulated across 3 departments. A classified military report instead identifies an unregistered anti-satellite electromagnetic weapon operating within Earth's orbit. The aide nodded, striving to keep his tone steady. The jammer was eliminated before activation. Its orbital computation capability far exceeds what a private individual should possess. Lin Hao fell into a long silence. His knuckles whitened as he squeezed his teacup so hard he did not even notice. Lin Hao swept his arm violently. The teacup crashed to the floor and shattered. Scalding tea splashed onto the aide who dared not flinch. For 12 consecutive days afterward, Lin Feng only streamed greenhouse-grown vegetables. Enhanced farmland accelerated crop growth. Tomatoes on his vines bore fruit. Chili plants ripened batch after batch. Cucumber vines climbed all over trellises. He even streamed himself preparing cold mixed cucumbers. Full sensory transmission conveyed crisp texture, triggering yet another surge in gifts. After 10 days, viewers demand a progress report, so Lin Feng finally tours the rice paddies. Rice shoots surged under the system, boosted ripening function. Beneath moonlight, plump grains shimmered pale gold. The grain is already mature, but Lin Feng accepts the system's recommendation to wait 3 more days for better flavor. He sat down on the paddy ridge and listened to rustling grains stirred by night breezes. On day 15, he opens a broadcast titled simply Rice Harvest and walks toward the golden paddies. 8 million concurrent viewers flooded in within 3 seconds. 10 seconds. Over 100 million. Within 30 seconds, 120 million viewers watch Lin Feng step barefoot into the paddy. 120 million people felt warm mud press underfoot. Earthy dampness mixed with faint floral rice scent filled virtual nostrils. Sunlight washed over golden rippling grain fields, flooding vision with bright hues of ripeness. His left hand gathered a handful of stalks. His sickle cuts each bundle near the base, producing a dry, crisp sound as the stalks separate. The heavy sheaf settles in his hand, while technicians expand server capacity to handle the audience. More than 100 million people watched in perfect silence as one man bent, cut rice, stood upright, and advanced across golden paddies. He repeats the practiced motion across the field and completes the harvest shortly after noon. Back inside his hand-built cabin, Lin Feng pours the harvested grain into a compact rice mill. He narrated grain threshing for his audience while the machine ran. Golden husks blew away in air currents and collected in a side trough. Bright translucent white rice kernels poured from the outlet, plump and glossy. Full sensory streaming carried the distinct mild sweet fragrance of newly milled rice. Sunlight and soil condensed within tiny grains. Viewer gifts crashed the streaming system for a second time. Lin Feng cupped rice in both hands and held it toward the camera. He set an iron pot over a wood-fired stove. He rinsed rice, added water, and lit firewood. Nothing but a simple wood stove. Bubbles gurgled beneath the pot lid. Steam escapes beneath the lid, carrying a warm, naturally sweet rice aroma to 130 million viewers. The scent reaches memories buried beneath centuries of synthetic food, while Lin Feng gently stirs the pot. The grains remain separate, soft, and glossy. When he fills a bowl under the stove's warm light, his mouth waters at the familiar sight before he lifts the first bite with chopsticks. Gentle resistance as teeth bit through grain husks. Soft, starchy texture spreading sweetness across the mouth when crushed. Satisfying sensations slid down the throat, and primal comfort spreading through the stomach as warm food filled it. Nutrient fluid has never created this satisfaction. And the broadcast breaks every Star Network gift record. At a children's hospital, 3 anorexic patients ask for food. Inside the palace, Anna watches the same broadcast. The moment sensory signals of steamed rice reached her perception centers, the flawless composure Anna had maintained for 19 years crumbled. Slender fingers clenched tight into silk bed sheets, and her whole body trembled. Her S-rank sensitivity amplifies every texture and aroma tenfold, overwhelming the composure she maintained for 19 years. Instinctive, overwhelming hunger she had never known tormented her. Anna had gone 3 full days without eating. More precisely, 3 days without consuming any form of nutrient fluid. Red medical alerts triggered 6 times from the Royal Medical Corps. Each time, she suppressed monitor signals using her psychic power. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, attending physicians forced open her bedchamber door. They found the Imperial princess leaning against a window, her face deathly pale, yet her gaze sharp as she studied a star chart hologram. The physician tried to protest until Anna's psychic pressure washed outward, dropping the room's apparent temperature drastically. Upon withdrawing, he wrote 4 words on her medical file. Sensory memories of steamed rice had etched themselves permanently into her perception centers, like a key unlocking a door. Behind that door lay genuine hunger she had never once felt in 19 years. Nutrient fluids could never satisfy this hunger. Anna dismissed medical alerts and pulled up star charts. Earth is guarded by 3 old satellites, 1 already destroyed, while official surveillance rates the planet at the lowest level. She zoomed in on orbital scans of the farm, spotting the outline of a Thunder 3 turret, a civilian-grade defensive weapon incapable of breaching shields on royal shuttles. Yet, the unidentified anti-satellite-grade electromagnetic weapon remained an unknown variable. She invoked royal privileges for psychic wellness travel, special permission granted by her father, allowing her to select destinations when psychic fluctuations grew severe. Her official flight plan listed Neptune Wellness Satellite as destination. She personally altered flight parameters, and setting Earth as true destination and activating full communication silence. Her chief guard attempted contact upon detecting anomalies, but her shuttle had already jumped into faster-than-light travel. Lin Feng knelt among chilly plants, trimming stray branches. Turrets had automatically locked onto a target. Arrests never deployed a single shuttle. This had to be a private venture. Lin Feng enters the control room as the turret tracks an unregistered royal shuttle approaching Earth. He issues a 10-second identity warning. When the countdown nears 0, a strained female voice requests permission to land for a meal. He glanced down at his bare, muddy feet, then looked back at the royal shuttle label displayed on his panel. Trouble was most certainly on its way. Still, he deactivated turret locks, keeping launch systems on standby. Dusk had fallen completely when the shuttle touched down. Lin Feng watches from the paddy ridge as the royal shuttle lands and its hatch opens 1 kilometer away. The system identifies an S-rank psychic and warns that Lin Feng lacks the combat power to defeat her directly. Anna spotted the man, standing on the ridge bare-legged with trouser cuffs rolled above his knees. He holds garden shears in one hand, with mud across his cheek and his trouser cuffs rolled above bare legs. Mental images of the calm rice harvest figure from streams merged with what she saw before her, creating jarring dissonance. When Anna calls him shorter than the stream suggested, the 183-centimeter farmer treats it as an absurd insult. She claims to be a wealthy viewer, but arriving alone in a royal shuttle makes that explanation impossible. Her S-rank power and royal craft reveal enough, so Lin Feng avoids exposing the identity she is hiding. Before negotiations continue, Anna's focus disappears, and her exhausted body lurches toward the ground. He tossed aside his shears and strode over to steady her arm. Anna felt icy cold all over. Her psychic powers resonated with delta factors within mutated local flora. For ordinary humans, those energies brought gentle relaxation. For S-rank psychics, it was like a tsunami crashing through her mind. Psychic blockages built over 19 years begin breaking apart as the local plant factors resonate through her mind. Seconds later, she regained awareness and seized Lin Feng's wrist tightly. Readings for her baseline psychic threshold exceeded instrument limits, yet fluctuation frequencies visibly stabilized. Inside the wooden cabin, Lin Feng poured a cup of compound psychic support beverage and handed it over. Anna sniffed once and drank it all immediately. She even dipped a finger to collect and swallow every final drop left inside the cup. After she drinks every drop of the support beverage, Lin Feng privately classifies her as dangerously obsessed with food. Anna asks to stay without invoking royal status, and Lin Feng sees the exhaustion beneath her controlled expression. He stared at the pale face before him, at the exhaustion hidden beneath her eyes that fought to stay calm. He then thought of the psychic power overload data the system had detected. He agrees to let her remain, under 3 conditions. No leaked information. complete cooperation, and obedience to farm arrangements. The third condition is labor, because an S-rank psychic with working hands can help manage an understaffed greenhouse. Anna, an Imperial princess and S-rank psychic, stared with a complicated expression at the cucumber trellises and tomato rows outside. Lin Feng read what she wanted. Right away. That evening, steam curled upward from white rice simmering on the stove inside the wooden house. Scrambled eggs with tomato, chilled cucumber, chili sauce, and steamed rice create Anna's first genuine dinner. Anna sat at the table, hands folded in her lap. For the very first time, real food lay right in front of her. Lin Feng held out a pair of chopsticks. Anna hesitated and picked up a piece of tomato egg. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The instant the food touched her tongue. He turned and filled another bowl of rice for her. After dinner, Anna leaned back against her chair. She had eaten 2.5 bowls of rice, and every scrap from all 3 plates was gone. Her psychic fluctuations had steadied, and her complexion looked noticeably rosier than it had half an hour earlier. The systems activates a treatment quest, requiring a complete diet plan for Anna and offering an advanced seeds encyclopedia as the reward. Anna moves into a plain but spotless tool shed beside the greenhouse and makes no complaint. Psychic factors from the greenhouse wash over her until she becomes drowsy without needing sleep medication. Before closing her eyes, she still savored the taste of that meal. At the Imperial Palace, an aide stares at Anna's missing location signal with a deathly pale face. The princess's shuttle had maintained total communication silence for 6 hours. Before the aide decides whether to report her absence, a noisy hen wakes Anna inside the tool shed. More precisely, a hen had hopped onto the tool shed window, stuck its head inside, and crowed 3 times straight, right behind her head. The moment her eyes flew open, her psychic power flared instinctively. The hen was thrown backward half a meter by an invisible force, flapping its wings as it hit the ground. Anna sat upright and stared blankly at the cracked ceiling above. Even with the Empire's top-tier psychic suppression devices from the Royal Medical Corps, their best single-day reduction had only ever hit 1.2%. Anna threw off her blanket and slipped her feet into the pair of rubber boots, 3 sizes too big that she had worn the day before. Lin Feng had already been busy in the greenhouse for half an hour. As Anna pushed open the tool shed door, she saw him squatting beside the chicken coop, hammering together a lopsided wooden nesting box. The same hen that had woken her circled around him, behaving in an ingratiating manner. Lin Feng has tamed the wild hen, which now circles him and reliably lays 1 egg each day. Without lifting his head, Lin Feng tossed her a pair of work gloves, which she caught automatically. He assigns Anna to harvest cucumbers with their stems intact and place them in the basket outside. 19 years of royal skincare had kept them that way, and right now they felt terribly out of place. She pulled on the gloves with a blank expression and walked toward the greenhouse. At 10 that morning, Lin Feng starts a live stream devoted to roasting the system's newly unlocked honey sweet potatoes. 3 days prior, the system had unlocked a honey sweet potato cultivar, boasting an impressive 34% sugar content. Its 34% sugar content exceeds anything Lin Feng encountered in his previous life. He squatted beside the fire pit, dug out a fist-sized sweet potato from the hot soil, and held it up for the camera. Cracked skin shows that syrup has begun escaping, proving the sweet potato is perfectly roasted. Then, a figure in plain casual clothes walked quickly past the right side of the frame, carrying a full sash of cucumbers on her way from the greenhouse. It lasted less than 2 seconds. Lin Feng kept talking about sweet potatoes. Then, Anna appeared a second time. Unable to locate the tap, she circled 3 meters in front of the camera and bent sideways to turn on an outdoor water faucet. Her profile remains visible long enough for viewers to identify the Imperial princess working on a penal colony farm. Lin Feng had already connected her S-rank power, royal shuttle, and secretive arrival to Princess Anna. On screens, he calmly buried the sweet potatoes back into the glowing charcoal and brushed dirt off his palms. He explains that roasting takes 40 minutes, ignoring a viewer count that has already passed 150 million. His deliberate refusal to acknowledge the commotion only drove stream popularity higher. Within 10 minutes, viewership passes 200 million, and Anna finally notices the active camera. She sees the lens aimed across the farm and hurries toward Lin Feng in alarm. Anna demands an explanation, but Lin Feng keeps stirring the charcoal without looking up. Anna could find no counter-argument. Her cheeks flushed bright with frustration. Yet, it still made her want to lash out. Lin Feng glanced at her, pried one fully roasted sweet potato free from the embers, and held it out. Anna turned her head away, refusing to take it. Lin Feng pretended to pull his hand back. When Lin Feng pretends to withdraw the sweet potato, Anna immediately snatches it before he can change his mind. Fortunately, she still wore work gloves. Otherwise, the scalding heat would have burned her badly. Golden flesh oozed amber-colored syrup, and a rich aroma flooded her nose. She blew on it and took a tentative bite. Her taste buds, unfulfilled for 19 years, were overwhelmed. Her mind blanked briefly and her legs buckled beneath her weight. She sank down onto the ground. At the Imperial Palace, a trembling aide presents the Emperor with screenshots of his daughter eating beside the field. The Emperor set down his writing brush and stared at the screenshot. His youngest daughter, dressed in simple clothes, squatted on muddy ground, clutching a smoking, unidentifiable food item, wearing an expression he had never once seen on her face. Shuttle telemetry shows her overload index falling from 82% to 67% in 3 days. Silence stretched long inside the Imperial study. The Emperor picked his brush back up. The Emperor orders everyone to leave Anna undisturbed for now, surprising the aide, who expected an immediate retrieval mission. Lin Hao stared at the projected stream screenshots. His fists clenched tight. Lin Hao sees the Imperial princess living with Lin Feng and opens a secret channel to plan his response. Anna had worked hard all day, blisters forming on her palms. Still, she voiced no complaints, quietly wrapping her injuries with psychic power to dull the pain. Lin Feng caught sight of her fingers tightening inward out of the corner of his eye, but said nothing. At dinner time, a tube of healing gel sat beside Anna's plate. She glanced from the gel over toward Lin Feng's back as he stirred food over the stove. She unscrewed the cap and spread the gel over her hands, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Dinner was sweet potato mixed rice paired with tangy, spicy shredded potatoes. During dinner, Anna asks why Lin Feng accepted the danger of sheltering an S-rank Imperial princess. Strands of hair fell forward, hiding most of her face. Her bowl trembled faintly in her hands. Lin Feng looked away and concentrated on finishing the last of the shredded potatoes on his plate. The system reports that Anna's effect has reached trust, confirming that his simple answer changed their relationship. At 5:30 the next morning, Lin Feng woke Anna. Anna appeared in less than 2 minutes. Behind the greenhouse lay a stretch of newly cleared ground Lin Feng had prepared a few days earlier. Morning mist covers the cleared field when Lin Feng gives Anna a hand-operated seed drill. Anna caught it and turned it over in her hands, thoroughly confused. She could not make sense of its structure. He explains that the front cuts furrows, the center releases seeds, and the rear covers them with soil. Anna nodded, pulled on her gloves, and followed him toward the fields holding the seed drill. His demonstration creates straight, shallow furrows with even spacing and gently compacted soil. In S-rank psychics, physical coordination far surpassed ordinary humans. The problem lay in strength control. On her very first pass pushing the drill, psychic power leaked out unintentionally. Soil clumps ahead of the drill tip were crushed into fine powder, and the planting furrow collapsed into a shallow hollow. Lin Feng warns her that seeds are not training targets, forcing Anna to suppress her psychic strength. She tried again, deliberately sealing off her psychic channels and relying purely on shoulder and core muscle strength to push the seed drill forward. Without psychic assistance, unfamiliar physical labor quickly burns through Anna's arms and shoulders. Before finishing her third furrow, her forearms burned with fatigue and blisters inside her gloves throbbed sharply. Viewers accuse Lin Feng of forcing royal labor, but Anna ignores their sympathy and continues pushing the drill. Sweat dripped from her forehead down to her chin and fell onto freshly turned earth. Dark, damp patches spread across the back of her plain shirt where perspiration clung to her shoulder blades. By noon, Lin Feng called for a break. Anna set down her tool and squatted on the ridge, catching her breath. She looked down at 6 neat rows of planting furrows she had finished, evenly spaced and consistently deep. This was the very first thing in her 19-year life she had accomplished, relying only on her own muscle and sweat. Lin Feng handed her a water canteen. Anna took a long drink. Water trickled down the corners of her mouth. Lin Feng explains that the system enhanced wheat sprout in 3 days and mature within half a month. The wheat would ripen in half a month. Anna stared at those orderly furrows as if gazing at an impending miracle. Lin Feng shifted his gaze away and said nothing. He turned toward the camera to show viewers the newly sown field, talking about winter, wheat, growth cycles, and soil moisture management. Lin Feng stubbornly kept Anna out of camera view, letting the audience stew in curiosity. At 3 in the afternoon, Lin Feng performed his routine perimeter security sweep. The system map shows an orange heat signature, 2 meters tall and heavier than 160 kilograms. It was approaching the farm from the edge of the northern woods. Lin Feng grew instantly alert. He pulled up his defense panel. His electromagnetic weapon was still cooling down after the earlier engagement against Anna's shuttle, and the anti-air turrets could not engage ground-based threats. He walked over to the tool shed and picked up a broad-bladed alloy shovel with a 1.2-meter handle, originally meant for turning soil, now a handy makeshift weapon. Toward dusk, Anna watered tomato plants inside the greenhouse. Deep, low thuds rumbled through the ground, like something huge pounding the earth while running at high speed. Anna dropped her hose and rushed outside. She watched a massive brown-gray creature smash straight through the northern perimeter fence. A massive mutated boar smashes through the northern fence before Anna can identify the creature. Its curled tusks and armored hide rise more than 2 meters at the shoulder. After breaking the fence, it did not stop. It charged forward and knocked over 2 full rows of tomato trellises. The hen in the chicken coop squawked in fright, beating its wings frantically. Lin Feng sprinted in from the side. He swung the alloy shovel hard, striking the boar squarely on its shoulder blade. The huge beast slid sideways half a meter. Yet it did not fall, barely slowing at all. It spun around and charged straight for Lin Feng. He dodged sideways, bracing the shovel handle across his body to block. The impact drives Lin Feng backwards several meters, carving deep tracks through the mud beneath his boots. He steadies himself and realizes the mutated boar's armor can withstand a direct shovel strike. Anna runs from the greenhouse without shoes, crossing loose gravel and dirt to reach him. Instead of launching an offensive psychic blast, she spread her power flat across the ground, 3 meters ahead of the boar's path, forming an invisible defensive barrier. The boar's full charging momentum crashes into Anna's psychic shield and nearly breaks her stance. Anna staggered backward, nearly losing her balance. The boar's momentum jammed its tusks fast inside the barrier. It scrabbled furiously with its front hooves, yet could not advance an inch. That split second was all Lin Feng needed. He charged forward, lifting his shovel high and striking hard down onto the thin seam of armored skin along the back of the boar's neck. The 200-plus kilogram mutated boar crashed heavily to the ground, kicking up clouds of dust. The boar collapses. While releasing the barrier leaves Anna drained and sweating from psychic strain. Lin Feng praises her timing, then warns her to wear shoes before charging into another fight. Anna glanced down and noticed her bare feet standing amid gravel and mud. Greenhouse dirt smudged across her toes. She pulled her feet behind herself, consciously, the tips of her ears flushing pink. Lin Feng studies the fallen boar and immediately decides that braised pork belongs on the dinner menu. Because the boar is too heavy to move whole, he dresses and quarters it beside the broken fence. Every cut was precise and clean, slicing meat neatly. Anna squatted 3 meters away and watched. At first she frowned involuntarily, then could not tear her eyes away. Lin Feng calls his calmness practical and continues cutting clean portions of pork belly for storage. Viewers alternate between praising the fight and recoiling from the unfamiliar reality of preparing meat. Lin Feng turns the camera away from the butchering shop. Before beginning the farm's first late-evening cooking stream, he held up the wild boar meat for the camera. He heats an iron pot over a wood-fired stove and blanches the pork belly in cold water. After removing the foam, he cuts the meat into even, mahjong tile-sized pieces. He cleaned the pot, rendered fat trimmed from the wild boar to make a thin layer of cooking oil, and turned to low heat. He dropped the meat chunks into the pot. The wooden spatula clanged sharply against the pot bottom. He tossed in 2-star anise pods, plus fresh cinnamon bark and bay leaves he had gathered. Full sensory streaming technology delivered the strong meat and spice fragrance straight to every viewer on the other side of the screen. Within 15 minutes, more than 100 million viewers watched the braising process, while Lin Feng remains calm. He brings the pot to a boil, then lowers the fire and simmers the pork for 40 minutes. 15 minutes before lifting the lid, he added wild honey and tomatoes. They compensated for the flatness caused by the lack of salt. Spices boosted the overall flavor, reducing reliance on salt. This also drove home just how desperately short of salt he was. Finally, he turned up the heat to reduce the sauce. The reduced sauce turns thick and glossy, clinging to pork belly soft enough to tremble with each movement. Lin Feng ladled the meat into a bowl. He packed steamed white rice firmly onto a plate and flipped it over. Braised pork was arranged beside the rice, and he drizzled sauce all around the rice mount. Lin Feng serves Anna, who lifts a piece of braised pork after enduring its aroma throughout the cooking process. The moment it touched her mouth, she froze, too reluctant to chew or swallow. The fat melts across her tongue, while tender meat fibers release rich juice with almost no pressure. Base notes of star anise and cinnamon rose in the aftertaste, tying every flavor together. The bright, sweet, sour hint of tomato cut through any heaviness. Anna closed her eyes, completely enchanted. Alternating bites of meat and rice, she mixed sauce into every grain. With each mouthful, her tense features softened more and more. An imperial princess eating wild boar on an exile planet becomes the broadcast's strangest and most persuasive image. He served her another bowl of rice and poured 2 extra spoonfuls of sauce over it. Anna picked it up and kept eating. Sauce smudged at the corners of her mouth, completely abandoning all formal manners. Lin Feng looked calmly at the camera. Anna shot him a glare, mouth still full of food. Even as she spoke, she picked up another piece of meat. After the stream, Anna's wristband confirms another major drop in her psychic overload index. Anna believes Lin Feng's food saved her, while a new system report appears inside his room. A combination of high-intensity physical labor, fresh food intake, and proper psychic stress release accelerates psychic overload reduction. Staring at the 37% progress bar, Lin Feng did quick mental calculations. At this pace, he would finish the quest in roughly 10 days. The advanced seed compendium was well within reach. Late at night, Anna lay on the narrow bed inside the utility shed, her stomach warm and comfortable. She pulled up the psychic stress fluctuation graph from her wristband for the day. The curve showed a slow decline during planting, a brief spike during combat, then a sharp drop. Imperial doctors, suppression devices, and countless treatment plans never achieved the relief produced by farm labor and fresh meals. None worked half so well as a hoe, an iron cooking pot, and a man farming the land. Anna turned off her wristband and rolled over. She buried her face in her pillow and mumbled a quiet sentence no one would ever hear. Psychic factors from the greenhouse plants rise and fall around her like gentle tides. Anna falls asleep within seconds, while dawn begins brightening the greenhouse. Fully ripened tomatoes hung heavy on the vines, plump and glossy. Anna was still fast asleep. Lin Feng did not wake her today. She had fought hard against the wild boar the previous day and deserved proper rest. Lin Feng had somewhere to go. The night before, he had studied his system map and spotted a set of coordinates near the farm. The braised pork had tasted wonderful, yet it lacked the satisfying kick salt brought to food. Without salt, every meal was merely passable. He took his alloy shovel for empty sealed buckets, filtering cloth, and components for a simple stiller obtained from the system shop. He stacked everything neatly in the rear cargo bed of the farm transport vehicle. As Lin Feng prepares to leave, Anna appears in the doorway wrapped in one of his jackets. Her hair is messy from sleep, but she immediately asks where he is going. Lin Feng did not turn around, securing his final cask of fresh water. Lin Feng tells her to reheat the leftover braised pork, then starts the transport vehicle. The engine hums as the vehicle rolls northwest across parched ground. Lin Feng jostled along in the transport vehicle for nearly an hour. Soil gradually gave way to gray-white alkali flats. A sulfurous, briny odor fills the air while cracked white salt crust replaces ordinary soil. Shrubs outside the window grew sparser and sparser until not even dry grass remained. An ecological warning popped up in the corner of his system map. Signs of medium-sized mutated creature activity detected in this zone. Lin Feng glanced at it, but did not slow down. 30 kilometers out from the farm, the transport vehicle suddenly sank. The chassis dragged against the ground. Wheels spun freely, flinging muddy slurry everywhere. Lin Feng shut off the engine and climbed out. Beneath the brittle top salt crust lay soft, yielding mud. The back wheels were stuck deep. He grabbed his shovel and dug for 10 minutes. He pries flat alkali rocks loose, wedges them beneath the tires, and powers the vehicle free. Gray-white mud caked his trouser legs, but he paid it no mind. Soon the salt lake came into view. The whole landscape looked as though covered in snow. On closer look, it was coarse salt crystals, layered thick along the shore in places reaching halfway up one's calves. The lake itself was not large, roughly the size of 2 football fields. Its water appeared milky white, depths hidden from sight. Lin Feng knelt down, dipped a finger in surface salt grains, and tasted them. He quickly spat and wiped his hand. Eating it raw would definitely cause severe diarrhea. Potassium chloride content was likely high. Large quantities could trigger irregular heart rhythms. Fortunately, he remembered salt refining procedures from his past life, and he already possessed the necessary tools bought from the system shop. Lin Feng unloaded his equipment onto flat alkali ground and built a temporary stove. He laid out iron pots, filter cloth, and distillation vessels in a neat row. First, he shoveled surface coarse salt into a pot, added lake water, and brought it to a boil to create saturated brine. Some tens of millions of viewers had drifted into the live stream without notice. Viewers mistake the boiling white mineral for poison or dark magic because none recognize salt refinement. He dissolved plant ash and water and slowly poured it into the brine while stirring. Gray-white flocculent sediment captures calcium and magnesium impurities before Lin Feng filters the brine. He filtered out solid residue using cloth. Clear salt water flowed into a second pot. Finally, he simmered over low heat to evaporate water and form salt crystals. Lin Feng leaned against his transport vehicle and ate cucumbers he had grown. His gaze drifted casually toward the lake center. The lake shifts from milky white near shore to pale violet at its center, where the system marks an unknown substance. His current gear and stamina ruled out risky trips out toward mid-lake, but he marked the location in his memory. Halfway through, evaporating his second batch of brine, the alkali ground trembled beneath his feet. Another tremor followed shortly, low frequency, as though something massive was moving nearby. Instantly alert, Lin Feng grabbed his alloy shovel and stood, scanning his surroundings. 300 meters away across the alkali flats, a gray-brown creature crawled slowly toward the salt lake. It was as big as a fully grown water buffalo with 4 short, thick limbs, its back covered in pitted, uneven scales. It resembled an enormous lizard, clearly another mutant, just like the wild boar. The beast had not spotted Lin Feng. His alloy shovel could kill it. A fight would leave him injured more than 40 kilometers from the farm, making the risk irrational. It was not worth the risk. He glanced toward his boiling brine pots. Roughly 10 more minutes, and he would harvest his first batch of crystals. Lin Feng made his decision immediately. He picked up a pot of half-concentrated waste brine, circled downwind to a pile of alkali boulders, and poured the whole pot over them. He retreats to an upwind hollow and watches as the mutated lizard follows the concentrated salt smell. It changed direction, crawled straight to the boulders, and began licking greedily with its broad tongue. After licking the brine-soaked rocks, the beast collapses half-lidded into a digestive torpor. Lin Feng waited 3 minutes to confirm it would not stir, then returned to his evaporation setup. Crystals formed from his first batch. He pinched a small amount and tasted. Throughout the afternoon, he repeated crystallization 3 times, harvesting 8 kilograms of refined salt in total. He filled 2 sealed buckets right to the top. More than enough for a long time. He stowed all equipment aboard the vehicle, glanced once more at the dormant lizard in the distance, then started the transport vehicle and headed home. The sky above the farm glowed orange gold. Anna sat on the steps outside the greenhouse, lost in thought. Anna hears the engine and watches Lin Feng's vehicle race toward the farm from the west. Once inside the farm compound, Lin Feng parked and jumped down. Dried alkaline mud coats his trousers, while Anna focuses on the sealed buckets in the cargo bed. He lifted one bucket, walked over, and unscrewed the lid. White crystals glinted bright under sunset light. Anna does not recognize the white crystals until Lin Feng identifies them as salt. Lin Feng picked 4 tomatoes inside the greenhouse and retrieved 3 eggs laid by mutated hens. He heated oil in his pan, scrambled the eggs, and set them aside. Next, he chopped tomatoes, sautéed them until juice flowed freely, then tipped the eggs back in and stirred everything together. He picked up a small bowl, scooped half a spoonful of salt, and sprinkled it into the pan. The added salt sharpens every aroma at once, making the new dish smell completely different from earlier meals. Lin Feng plates the finished tomato and egg stir-fry beside a bowl of steaming rice. He pushed the plate toward Anna, signaling her to try it. Anna took a bite of egg with her chopsticks. All previous meals, rice, sweet potatoes, braised pork, dishes she had thought represented absolute peak flavor, were now utterly outshone. Salt separates and clarifies every flavor, sharpening tomato acidity while strengthening the egg's savory richness. She picked her bowl back up, mixed every last drop of tomato sauce into rice, and ate until nothing remained. Anna realizes that every earlier meal had been an incomplete version made without salt. That night, the system reports Anna's psychic overload index at 52.7%. The 5.5% single-day drop is the largest improvement since her arrival. The system concludes that salt and trace minerals work together with the plant's psychic factors. Half a month after Anna arrives, Lin Feng examines fully ripened golden wheat ears. The grain contains 18.7% protein and gluten, ideal for hand-pulled noodles. Anna walked over carrying empty baskets. She glanced at wheat ears before Lin Feng. Anna was brimming with anticipation, eager to work. Without unnecessary words, they fell into a smooth, well-practiced rhythm. Anna lifts another heavy basket, glances toward Lin Feng's back, and smiles at their practiced teamwork. Back in the Imperial capital, her index had almost always stayed above 80%. Life on this planet made her feel genuinely at ease. Anna set the basket onto the cart and drew a deep breath. The air smelled of soil, grass, and sun-warmed plants. This was the life she truly wanted. Then Lin Feng's wristband buzzed. A trending topic notification popped up. A manufactured headline accuses Lin Feng's gene-contaminated food of controlling the Imperial princess. The keyword gene collapse syndrome had rocketed straight to #1, trending within 1 hour. Attached was a screenshot from the live stream showing Anna eating sweet potatoes edited with dramatic purple rippling special effects, captioned proof of mental manipulation. Stellar Life Group claims the crops contain gene-altering contaminants, and Lin Feng shows Anna the coordinated attack. She scanned the content, her expression shifting instantly. Lin Feng slipped his wristband away, tone sharp. Lin Feng identifies Stellar Life Group and the Lin clan as the forces driving the rapidly spreading rumor. He turned back to cutting wheat. Without looking up, his sickle sliced cleanly through wheat stalks. Stellar Life is the largest nutrient-paste conglomerate. Lin Feng represented a massive threat to their interests. 3 senators present an emergency public health proposal inside the Imperial Council. It was invoking public health safety protocols to order the 7th Imperial Fleet blockade of planetary orbit, arrest Lin Feng, and rescue Her Royal Highness Princess Anna. The first vote passes, authorizing enforcement and an Imperial Fleet blockade within 72 hours. At 2 that afternoon, Lin Feng begins a live stream with only 41 million viewers remaining. 3 days prior, it had exceeded 200 million. Gift donations had also plummeted sharply. He did not shout back at raging viewers. Instead, he slowly panned his camera toward a chopping board beside the stove. Upon it sat freshly kneaded dough, milled that morning from newly harvested wheat. Lin Feng rolled up his sleeves. He lifted the dough and slammed it hard against the board. A crisp sound heard by 40 million simultaneous viewers. Then he kneaded, folded, stretched, and slammed repeatedly. With every fold, gluten strands strengthened. His movements held no flashy flourishes, only pinpoint precision and brute strength. 20 minutes later, the lump of dough had transformed into strands of noodles, thin as silk hairs, distinct and separate. The finished noodles hang from his fingers like a waterfall, holding the audience despite the propaganda campaign. Water boils violently as Lin Feng shakes the noodles loose and drops them into the pot. In a second pot, bone stock had simmered on low heat all morning, thick and milky white. The pork bones came from the mutated wild boar they'd hunted. The mutated boar has supplied meat and bones for both of them throughout the past half-month. Lin Feng's attention briefly shifts towards Anna's healthier appearance before he forces himself back to cooking. The noodles were strained into a bowl, topped with rich bone broth, and garnished with the fragrant fried scallions. Lin Feng carried the bowl over to the camera lens. He lifted a chopstick full of noodles and ate. 40 million minds received the sensory feed simultaneously. The springy bite of the noodles registered against their teeth. The umami of the broth spread across their tongues, and the roasted aroma of scallion oil flooded their nasal cavities. Viewers mid-typing froze with their hands suspended above input panels. Insults died unspoken in their throats as their mouths flooded with saliva and their stomachs churned with primal hunger. Their bodies sent an undeniable signal to their brains. This was no poison, but the finest delicacy they had ever missed out on. Lin Feng spoke directly to the camera. Viewership surged back to 200 million. Lin Feng drained the last drop of broth from his bowl and set down his chopsticks. He patted his stomach with a quiet murmur. He then picked up a second bowl of noodles and held it out toward the edge of the frame. A hand marked with old blister scars reached out to take it. Anna stepped into the camera's view and sat across from him. She lifted the bowl, took a mouthful of noodles, and savored the taste. The image of an exile and Imperial princess, sharing noodles forces Stellar Life Group's executives into another emergency meeting. The vice president stared at the real-time data panel and slammed his water cup across the desk in a fit of rage. The technical director wore a grim expression. His broadcast runs on the Star Network's underlying core protocols. Only the central governing console can terminate the stream, and its neutral administrators reject the request. Their official ruling states the stream contains no violating content. Silence fell over the conference room until an encrypted communication channel lit up. Lin Hao's voice enters through an encrypted channel and reminds the executives that public opinion has several battlefields. He sent over a new template for public discourse. The document was titled Taste Addiction Mechanism as Psychic Users. A cold smirk tugged at the vice president's lips after reading the file. It was a viciously clever tactic. The more Lin Feng claimed he controlled no one, the more the public would be told he was suffering from severe delusion. Anna sat curled up in the corner of the greenhouse, her knees drawn to her chest. Data flickered faintly on her wristband. Her psychic overload index dipped slightly from 44.2% to 44%. Lin Feng walked over and set a glass of honey-sweetened tomato juice beside her. She took the drink and sipped slowly, falling into a long stretch of silence. Lin Feng studied her calmly. Anna blinked in surprise before a soft laugh escaped her. Lin Feng turned to head toward his quarters when a system notification materialized soundlessly before his eyes. The emergency mission requires an official refutation before the fleet arrives, with the entire farm locked permanently if Lin Feng fails. Instead of returning to his room, he walked over to the cucumber vines in the greenhouse. Dozens of fresh cucumbers, still topped with blooms and lined with tiny prickles, hung heavy amid lush green foliage, thriving vigorously. He plucked 10 cucumbers. He seals 10 cucumbers and several tomatoes inside a thermostatic transport case for independent testing. Once finished, he input a string of encrypted frequencies into his wristband. The communication connected almost instantly, projecting a hologram of Li Xinghe's weary face. Li Xinghe's tapping fingers freeze when Lin Feng claims the crops can repair damage caused by nutrient pastes. The memory of Lin Feng's medicinal mint convinces Li Xinghe that the new claim may be real. Lin Feng rejects every what-if and asks whether Li Xinghe is willing to gamble on the evidence. Li Xinghe meets Lin Feng's unwavering gaze, stands and agrees to retrieve the samples within 15 hours. Lin Feng plucked another cucumber from the vine, gripped both ends firmly, and snapped it clean in half. A crisp cracking sound echoed through the greenhouse, releasing a rich, refreshing aroma that filled every corner of the enclosed space. In the far corner, Anna, who had been lost in thought, jerked her head upward at the scent. She slipped on her slippers and hurried over, gazed fixed firmly on the broken cucumber in Lin Feng's hands, swallowing visibly. Lin Feng handed her the cucumber half in his right hand. She bit into it without wiping its skin first. Crisp, sweet juice burst across her tongue, the moment her teeth sank into the flesh. The tension coiled in her shoulders melted away entirely, her whole body relaxing as if submerged in warm water. Lin Feng paid her no mind as he carried the sealed thermostatic case to the ejection outside the greenhouse launch. A blast of compressed air propelled the container outward in a streak of light toward outer space. Early the next morning, as Lin Feng went live once more, swarms of paid trolls flooded his stream immediately. He is a plague upon the galaxy. Anna had received a confidential message from the Imperial royal household at dawn. Her father commanded her to return to the Imperial capital without delay. She frowned at the order and chose not to share this news with Lin Feng. The farm's radar picked up an unmarked miniature shuttle, hovering in geosynchronous Earth orbit coated in military-grade stealth plating. The craft was invisible to standard scanning equipment. Out in orbit, mechanical arms extended from the shuttle retrieved the thermostatic case and ignited its sapphire blue thrusters before vanishing via space jump. At the exact moment the shuttle executed its jump, a deep space probe deployed by Lin Hao tens of thousands of kilometers from Earth sent out a faint alert signal. At the Lin Clan Manor, Lin Hao receives a weak orbital disturbance alert, but dismisses it as harmless. He checked the countdown timer on his screen. 30 hours remained until the Imperial fleet reached Earth. A pinned broadcast appears across the Star Network, counting down to Earth's supposed purification. Lin Hao appears beside 4 white-coated so-called experts who support Stellar Life Group's contamination claim. Joint research by numerous specialists from Stellar Life Group has confirmed that Earth-grown vegetation contains lethal neurotoxins. Long-term consumption leads to irreversible genetic contamination. A bald expert beside him picked up his cue instantly. They claim Lin Feng's broadcasts prove the crops damage neural barriers and create physiological dependency. Princess Anna has had her rationality seized by these toxic substances. Paid supporters call for the farm's destruction, and present Lin Hao as the defender of Imperial public health. Lin Feng stood in his farm courtyard, scrolling through the vicious deluge of abuse on his optical device, and let out a yawn. He turned toward the kitchen and scooped rice for 2 bowls from the grain storage jar. At Xinghe Group headquarters, the stealth shuttle lands with the secured crop samples. Ignoring political pressure, Li Xinghe takes the case and heads directly to the Imperial Academy of Sciences. 30 minutes later, multiple levitating vehicles screeched to a halt before a massive, pure white research complex. Li Xinghe clutched the case, brushed past station guards, and forced his way into the Academy's restricted core research zone with his security detail. A sealed laboratory door stood shut at the end of the corridor. Li Xinghe kicked the door clean off its locking mechanism. A disheveled Professor Murphy whirled around, tweezers raised in one hand, face twisted with fury. Li Xinghe wasted no words, marching to the lab workstation and pressing the release switch for the thermostatic case. The container lid popped open, and its potent natural fragrance flooded the entire laboratory in an instant. Murphy's angry retort died in his throat. The portable environmental detector hanging around his neck blared a shrill alarm. The detector displays an ultra-high concentration of active biological factors inside the cucumbers. Murphy tossed his tweezers aside and lunged toward the case, hands trembling as he stared at the vibrant green cucumbers inside. Murphy grabs a cucumber and runs it through the Academy's most advanced genetic mapping analyzer. Murphy shouted while frantically operating the control panel. Li Xinghe leaned against the workbench and exhaled deeply. Li Xinghe explains that Lin Feng grew the crops on Earth and claims they can repair inherited genetic defects. Murphy paid him no heed, his gaze glued to the flood of data scrolling across the analyzer display. 20 hours were left on the fleet arrival countdown. A crisp chime signaled the completion of the analysis. Murphy pressed his face nearly against the display glass as he scanned the results, his breathing growing increasingly erratic before he burst into wild, elated laughter. Murphy grabs Li Xinghe in excitement and confirms that the sample contains no contamination whatsoever. These plants synthesize a perfect genetic lock repair enzyme capable of mending fractured genetic chains formed after centuries of nutrient paste reliance. Li Xinghe's anxiety lifts completely, although the long wait has soaked his shirt with sweat. The Lin clan is spreading misinformation across the Star Network, claiming these crops carry neurotoxins. Murphy condemns the false experts and begins writing an official paper from the verified data. Meanwhile, in a monitoring room outside the laboratory complex, a lab assistant in a white coat watched the spiking energy draw from the high-end analyzer and dialed a private communication channel in secret. A compromised laboratory assistant secretly reports Murphy's analyzer activity and Li Xinghe's visit to Lin Hao. Lin Hao let out a cold chuckle on the other end of the line, trying to stage a comeback. Lin Hao orders the laboratory's network severed, cutting Murphy's screens to black mid-sentence. He froze for 2 heartbeats before unleashing a thunderous roar of rage. He rushed to the lab door, only to find the electronic locks fully engaged and sealed shut. With 10 hours remaining, Lin Hao publicly tracks the approaching fleet while presenting victory as inevitable. His triumphant broadcast continues as the furious Professor Murphy searches the locked laboratory for another transmission route. He seized a high-density wrench from a nearby workbench and slammed it repeatedly against the bulletproof glass, covering the backup control console. Blood streamed down his palms as he reached for a large red physical emergency lever and jammed it fully downward. Only the Academy's most critical work can use the once-per-decade emergency full-spectrum broadcast override. The override can reach the entire empire, where Lin Hao's livestream already holds more than 3 billion viewers, all waiting to witness Earth's annihilation for the glory of the Empire. For pure, uncorrupted genetics, Lin Hao raised a wine glass toward the camera with a cold smile, just as he brought the glass to his lips to drink in celebration. Every optical device, personal wristband, and public holographic billboard across the entire galaxy stuttered and froze simultaneously. Lin Hao's live feed was forcibly terminated. A 30,000-word study on pre-Great Purge botanical genetics replaces Lin Hao's feed across every screen. Beneath the paper rested a gleaming golden embossed seal, the highest official accreditation mark of the Imperial Academy of Sciences. Right after the document loaded, Murphy's disheveled, furious holographic projection appeared on every display screen in the Empire. Murphy declares that Lin Feng's crops contain no contamination and can repair humanity's inherited nutrient paste damage. Far from being toxic, their inherent genetic repair enzyme offers a definitive cure for the hereditary genetic deterioration, plaguing humanity after centuries of nutrient paste consumption. Total silence blanketed the Star Network for a full 60 seconds. Not a sound registered across public broadcasts. Then the entire Star Network erupted in uproar. Lin Hao claimed these plants were neurotoxic. The revelation exposes the Lin clan's conspiracy and reverses public opinion across the Star Network. The false charge of genetic contamination against Lin Feng was reduced to nothing more than a ridiculous, malicious conspiracy. Inside the Lin clan manor on the Imperial capital planet, Lin Hao's wineglass slipped from his grasp and smashed against the floor with a sharp clatter. He stared blankly at Murphy's enraged hologram. His face drained of all color as cold dread washed over his entire body. He scrambled frantically toward his communications panel and opened an urgent channel to the fleet commander. Lin Hao orders immediate fire, but the fleet commander refuses the desperate command. Supreme Military Command designates Earth a protected Imperial zone, and the fleet terminates its attack. Back on Earth, the completed emergency mission rewards Lin Feng with an orbital-grade defense upgrade. 12 cannon coordinates appear around the farm, each already charged and connected to his control interface. He activates them as the Imperial fleet begins retreating from the newly protected planet. Alarms tear through every bridge because the entire formation has been locked by targeting radar. 12 blue particle beams pierce the atmospheres and stop within 10 meters of the capital ships. One more movement would melt through the Empire's strongest hull plating, leaving the commander no room to bluff. Lin Feng opens a public channel and calmly warns that his farm is private property. The galaxy watches an F-rank exile hold an Imperial fleet at the edge of Earth without firing a fatal shot. Inside the palace, the Emperor studies the defense network and finally recognizes Lin Feng's value. He orders a top diplomatic delegation to reach Earth within 3 days and secure Lin Feng's allegiance at any cost. The Emperor even permits them to offer half the empire before asking what Princess Anna is doing there. His steward reports that the royal heir is currently performing farm labor for the exile. Anna stands ankle-deep in a flooded paddy, mud across her face, and a hoe gripped in both hands. She asks whether finishing the plot will earn her an extra chicken drumstick at dinner. Lin Feng promises the extra drumstick. Completely at home on the planet his clan expected to become his grave.